Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be on you all. I'm Dr. Mohyuddin Mirza, your host for the program, Food for Thought. I hope you have been listening to this program. We have been getting some feedback on some of the recent program we did. Today, we're going to talk about family violence. Why did we choose this topic was that daily in the media and the newspaper and of course television, this subject keeps on coming, because family is the basic unit of society, and family is the one in which future generations are going to come as well. So when violence comes in, so many problems and issues also come in. So today we are very fortunate that two very distinguished guests are with us. One is Patrick Dillon. He is the director of the Today Center here in Edmonton. We'll talk more about what really does he do. And also Mary Fiacui from the Catholic Social Services. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Mary, tell us a little bit about yourself. You were saying that you are with the Catholic Social Services here in Edmonton.
I work for Catholic Social Services, which is one of the largest human saving agencies here in Canada. We have many programs, one of which is immigration and settlement services.
So what do you do when the new immigrants come? You provide them help in settlement. That's one aspect.
Yes, Catholic Social Services receives all government-sponsored refugees that come to Edmonton. We receive them from the airport, put them at reception house. We assign them with settlement counselors who speak their language. They get them housing, social insurance cards, register children in school, help them with employment, with language. And we also help family-sponsored immigrants, economic immigrants, refugee claimants, any newcomer to Edmonton who is looking for services.
You don't leave them alone after that. I notice you get involved with the later on as well with the families.
We don't leave them alone. Okay, we help them. A lot of the people that we work with, this is the first time they've been overseas. If they're coming from Africa, this is the first time they are away from family. This is the first time they are without extended family. Many of them are coming from refugee camps. And this is the first time even they've seen snow. It's very, very cold. So with that comes a lot of challenges. Many are coming from countries or places where there is very distinct gender roles. And getting here, we find that a lot of women who've never worked outside the home are now having to go and look for jobs. Men who have never been in the kitchen, now they have to go and work in the kitchen because their wives are working 2-3 jobs. They have to learn to give their children a bath. So there is this exchange of gender roles, which is, strange to both mom and dad or husband and wife. They all have to learn. That comes with a lot of stress.
Absolutely.
That stress sometimes leads into...
You made a very interesting point here that those people come from a totally different background once they come to Canada. And you are so right that men especially, they are used to not going to the kitchen, and here sometimes the roles could get reversed. They have to provide some help as well to the wife, spouse and family. Let's just hold on for a second. Patrick, a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure. The Today Family Violence Help Center is a new organization. We started in November of 2009. I joined the organization just a couple of months prior to help get it off the ground. A lot of community work had been done in the development of the center, and I just had to put some of the pieces together. Prior to that, I was with Children and Youth Services with the provincial government. And prior to that, I was a fireman for 8 years.
Farming?
A fireman.
Oh, fireman. Okay.
A firefighter. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So, and then I was a previous executive director with another organization years ago. I've been all over this great province of ours, doing a wide variety of different things. So.
I'm just curious that the name the Today Center.
Yes.
Does it have any significance in terms of providing help today?
Yes, it does. Thank you for that. It does. we know that family violence can be such a negative topic to deal with.
Exactly.
And we want it to be a positive approach for people.
Right.
And so today, it starts today. Today we will help you. Today we'll get you connected to services. Today is a fresh start.
So interesting that many times we like to delay it for tomorrow.
Yes.
But you're saying today is the starting point.
That's right.
Let's admit it and move ahead.
Yes. And we will help break that cycle of violence with you and to move forward.
Okay. Great. I think that's a good starting point right now. Mary, a little bit on how do you define a family? I know in my mind a father, mother, children, but isn't the definition of family is more global now in terms of dogs and cats and animals and everything is a part of the family now, considered as a family?
The family, I'm coming from Africa, so family is my grandmother, my grandfather, my third generation cousin, my uncles, and at some point even neighbors can be included in the definition of family.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think I see that quite a lot with the refugees that we see. Many of them have run away from war situations.
Exactly, yeah.
When a bomb fell, they ran away with whatever little child was holding on to their pants or their skirts, and those are the children they went with in the refugee camp. They don't know where their parents are, and you also don't know where your children are.
Exactly, yeah.
You live in a refugee camp for 20 years. That child becomes your child. When you come to Canada, we see some of those families where they've made up those families depending on who they left the village with. So you come here, that is your family. And I think Canada has come a long way with its immigration policy in the definition of family. You know, family could be 2 men living together, 2 women living together. Family could be me and my dog.
Yeah, exactly.
So your pets are included, your grandparents, your uncles. And here, a lot of us immigrants come here and we don't have family. Catholic Social Services, we have what we call the host program, where you are matched with a Canadian family or someone who's been here much longer than you to help you with that integration. That becomes your family.
That's good to know. And going back to Patrick, I'd like to hear some statistical information for our viewers. That is it that widespread? Is it I understand you have statistics both for Canada and for Alberta.
Yes, I'd like to share with you an interesting statistic. I mean, something that we hear about in the news every day is a death of a military person. And when I talk about this, I mean no disrespect to that.
Naturally, yeah.
But every day in the news we hear about a death in the military. And I have an interesting statistic from a book called War on Women from Brian Villay. In between 2000 and 2006, 4,588 soldiers and law enforcement personnel were killed in the U.S.
4,588?
Yes, in the U.S.
In the U.S.
In Canada, between 2000 and 2006, military and law enforcement personnel, 101. Okay. When you compare that to family violence statistics, okay, between the same 7-year period, okay, 8,000 women were shot, stabbed, strangled, or beaten to death by a male intimate partner.
Really?
That's 2 times more than military or law enforcement. Now, in Canada, 101 Canadian soldiers and policemen were killed. 500 women were shot, stabbed, strangled, or beaten to death. That's 5 times more. 5 times, and that's a startling comparison between the two. Another interesting statistic that for people to understand is that when you talk about family violence, most people talk about the man being the abuser, women or children being the victims. The reason for that is because statistically, the occurrence of family violence is 83% towards women and 17% towards men.
So what you're saying is that 83% men violence towards abusing women, and 17% the other way around.
The other way around, yes. Now that number has changed because a few years ago, about 3-4 years ago, it was 86% and 14%. So it has changed somewhat, where more and more males are coming forward saying, I'm a victim of violence.
And that's a tough one to do.
Yes, very much. The male pride.
Right, exactly.
And so, but also because there's more services out there and people are feeling more comfortable to approach those services.
Exactly, yeah. Mary?
I was just going to add on to Patrick's. I think there's another form of violence when we work with immigrants and refugees, especially with refugees. We see a lot of violence of children to their parents.
That's correct, yes.
And that is usually not reported.
Right.
We get a lot of mothers who come, they have a black eye and say, I can't say.
Child hit her?
Yes.
Really?
And the mother says, the reason why I came to Canada is for my child.
Right.
And I can't report my child because they end up in jail.
That's right.
And again, it's that role reversal where these families were in refugee camps for a long time. And these young boys were the breadwinners.
Exactly.
They've taken over the role of the father who is missing, dead in the war, or something happened. Then when they come here to Canada, all of a sudden they're children, and the check comes in mom's name. Mom now is supposed to be the decision maker in the home. So that responsibility is taken away from the male child, who gets very, very frustrated for whatever reason. And we know that when there's violence, it usually goes towards the weakest person in the home, and mom happens. So we see a lot of that, and many times it doesn't really.
So what you're trying to tell us that is not only a man violence against women, some women against men, but this is a very intriguing aspect you're telling. I never realized that children will be violent against their mothers as well.
Yes.
And you mentioned particular situation, but of course it's not only Africa where wars are, it could happen in any situation.
We've seen it in any situation, and I think when I've gone to conferences, we've seen it also here in Canada, where it could be domestic violence, where the parent becomes an invalid or they are senior, and the children want money from them, and they...
Let's just talk a little bit on the subject. What is violence? I mean, we did mention a little bit that it could be physical violence, it could be mental torture. You are using some other terminology. Let's give a small, not small, but a definition for our viewer could understand that it's not literally you hit somebody. Violence could be many other ways as well.
Right. Every relationship has power and control issues. Unhealthy relationships that have family violence in it are not able to balance that power and control. Okay?
Power and control.
Power and control.
Power, and you are not defining any power. Power could mean financial power, it could mean
emotional
power.
Or it could be physical, which is something that more and more people are familiar with, the physical. But family violence, to define it, is exerting power and control over another to hurt them intentionally.
Hurt them intentionally?
Yeah.
Would you like to add to that definition?
I think I would agree with Patrick that it's an issue of power and control, whether it's the man doing it or the woman doing it. In terms of physical, again, there could be anger issues. And when someone is not able to control their anger, they just punch someone. Where it becomes a power and control issue is we get provoked in so many situations. I get provoked at work. Do I punch my boss? I don't. I figure out how to deal with it. When I go home, my wife provokes me, I punch, or my husband provokes me, because I know I have the power, I have the control, and I know I can get away with it. So again, you assess the situation and you see where you can get away with it.
So this definition which we were talking, that family violence is a situation in which one family member causes physical or emotional, you were saying, to another family member. And it doesn't matter, it is a hierarchical higher member or lower member, it could be anywhere. I think this is the important point you were saying. At the center of this violence is the abuser's need to gain power and control. So is that an evolutionary desire to have power or control?
Well, family violence is a learned behavior. Okay,
I'd like to hear that. So
sure.
it is a learned behavior.
Yes, family violence is a learned behavior. So children at a young age, okay, a very impressionable age, would learn about the norms of their societal life. And it could be a violent life. If it's a violent life, they'll learn that through adulthood, that's the way it's supposed to be. Okay? You know, Mary earlier talked about the change in roles. Okay? And if boys are born and bred to believe that they are the first-class citizens and women are second-class citizens, they will believe that through their adulthood. Right?
But whatever happened to what we were taught, motherhood? I know in Islam at least, and many other religions, I know that paradise lies under the feet of the mother. And we always understood it that she is untouchable, you know, that not only, I mean, don't talk about physical violence, but even, you know, keeping your head down, yes mom. So that time is changed. That's what you're telling me. Am I right when I'm saying that the society is changing, the roles are changing, what children see, that motherhood aspect, has that changed that much that kids will hurt their moms as well?
Well, I think it's important to point out too, in terms of what you're saying around changing, what we've seen in change of roles is they're not as distinct as they used to be. Okay, they're not as defined as they used to be. They're more in sync with each other and more of shared responsibilities. And there are couples out there, families out there, that are not fully understanding that there is more of that synchronization of roles, rather than where years ago, generations ago, the roles were more defined, more distinct.
And is it possible that our education system is not teaching these things, at least which we were taught a long time ago, that what is a family unit, what's the role of mother, what's the role of children? Is that happening in the education system?
You know, I don't think we can put that the whole responsibility of education to the education system as an institution. I think as a society we have a responsibility. You know, there's this adage, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a whole village to teach a child. If I see my neighbor's child doing something wrong, I do have a responsibility to step in and control. And I think I can speak with the immigrants and refugees that we are working with. That is lacking. I talked earlier on, whether they were in the refugee camp or in the village, there's this whole support, which is lacking here. If you have a mom who is working 2 jobs, there is no one to teach this child the right way. So the children are just, so I think we all have a responsibility of educating children, which we are missing today because we are a very busy society.
And I would concur with what Mary's saying in that it's not just education's responsibility. The family itself has changed in terms of having the time of having the quality time as a family to learn about the proper morals and values of what's right and wrong. Kids today are learning what's right and wrong on the internet.
Yes, absolutely. So we did talk a little bit. Abuse can be physical, such as slapping, hitting, kicking, punching, or burning. Burning, I was surprised at this one. Does that happen? I've heard that cigarette butts are used sometime. Have you seen such things in your experience?
It's very hard to sometimes to explain what happens. When I worked with children's services, when you just said you worked with children's services, I saw some commonalities there. I saw children with burns. Now, what exactly was happening? It's very hard to say. A child will be saying, my mom or my dad burnt me. The mom is saying, no, it was an accident. There's a lot of mental health issues in there. So you don't really, it's hard to know what exactly is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And specifically around, cigarette burns,
right.
that is a tool that's used by parents to gain control back of the child's behavior.
As a punishment of some sort.
That's right. And the parent doesn't feel that they are able to control their child through verbal communication.
Right, right.
So they'll use cigarettes as a tool for, and I'll, since you use that example, as a tool to try and gain that control back. And what the parent is not understanding is the difference between discipline and abusive.
Abusive, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, that, again, is not learning that, the difference between disciplining your child and being abusive towards your child. So.
Right. The other thing mentioned here, emotional, such as threats, harassment, and insults. So even if somebody perceives it's an insult to me based on my, the way I perceive things, that could be harassment as well.
Yes.
That will be considered as violence.
Yes.
Yes.
Because if you are always insulting a child and you're calling them stupid, you're calling them no good.
Right, right.
That child learns that as a way of communication.
Right, right.
Next time someone does something to them, that's how they've learned to deal with the situation.
Right, right.
And and it hurts too. I mean, in my culture, we say sometimes words are more painful than sticks.
Yeah. But the point you made that the old adage that it takes a village to raise a young boy, a young girl, whatever, we don't see in the Canadian society as such, is it? I mean, so do you think this model might come into Canada, that we as a community, we take responsibility, and if something goes wrong, we say it's our child and we have a social responsibility, or the way the society is, that's not going to happen? Tough question.
Do you want to answer?
Well, that's difficult to answer. I think that I think there are certain segments of our society that do act on that in terms of working together.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, I'll tout our own horn here in the sense that what the Today Center is about a number of agencies that are based out of the same location, working for the client.
Okay.
And trying to address the client's needs. I think the difficulty in, the village trying to raise the child is the resources to bring those people together to do that.
Right.
And I think my personal belief is that there have been individuals when they have tried to come or to assist a child in a park, it's been perceived as a negative thing.
Exactly.
And then they get punished for it, and then it inhibits people from doing that again.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I would say that it is happening in Canadian society, where there are communities trying to work together to raise the child or provide services to people that need it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the city too. I'm on a number of advisory committees where the city is beginning to look at ways of actually how do we work together, how do we live as communities, whether it's ethnic groups or geographic populations, how do we make our communities work? And those are some of the things they are addressing.
Right.
Do we have block parties, for example, once a month where the community gets to know each other?
Right.
So it will take some time, like Patrick said, but I think we're trying.
It's a very complex issue. There's no doubt about that, because starting right from the childhood, and then those children are growing up, and like we mentioned, if they're coming from a war-torn area, they're going to learn those things what they saw there, and then they continue those kind of behavior. So just summarizing that there are many ways that the abuser tears down the victim's sense of power and security. See, we were talking power and control.
Yes.
And threat, for example, physical harm, cutting off financial support. I've never realized, is that a type of threat as well?
Absolutely, because for someone to commit family violence towards another, it's important for the abuser to try and control everything about the victim. Okay, and that would mean cutting off financial resources, cutting off their friendships, cutting off any kind of outside network or support that they have, which would allow the abuser to further control them. Because if they do have those other connections or resources, it makes it difficult for the abuser to try and control them.
I have an example where a young girl was married and brought in, and she came to live with a family where mom, dad, the whole family lived there, the husband's family. And she had a job where she brought the check, gave it to the mother-in-law, and she had, and she could not even go to McDonald's, even if she wanted French fries. The money that she brought was part of the family income. And she had no say whatsoever. If she needed something, she had to go and ask for that money. And many times she was told, no, this money is for other things that are more important than what you need.
And I mean, financial abuse is very common in seniors, elders, where their own children are trying to take their money.
Resources,
And I mean, here in Alberta, the senior population here has a nest egg of finances, and it's a common issue here in Alberta. 1 in 10 seniors is abused by their own children.
Really? We'd like to talk more on this subject in our second program, but if I summarize what I learned today is that always have a red flag on that the violence could take different shapes. And your idea of power and control, which is a normal thing. All of us need some power and some control.
That's right.
If I'm the provider of resources or money, I expect some power, but it has to be reasonable.
That's right.
The moment you cross those lines, I think that's where the problems start coming in. And we'd like to continue this discussion a little bit more. What can we do as a society, as individuals, as our programs to move this forward, and hopefully even if somebody who listened to us could pick up one item and reform himself or herself, I think it is worth it. Thank you very much. We appreciate that you are able to come. So here it is, first part of our program, talking about what is family, what is violence. It's not only the physical abuse, but cutting off financial assistance, the social isolation, the threats we do, that if you do this, I'm going to do this. And unfortunately, some segment of the society are structured like that, that they think that this is all right, that I have the control over it. So inshallah, we'll continue the subject a little bit more with our distinguished guests later part of the program. Thank you very much. This is program Food for Thought. I'm your host, Dr. Mohyuddin Mirza. May Allah be with you. May God be with you to understand that this is a serious issue, and we want some knowledge to not to indulge into these things. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.